Huh? Huh?
Hi, James. Welcome to Many Questions, the show where we ask each guest many questions about themselves and their mental health journey. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
I know one of your other interests is attachment theory. So, what is that?
Attachment theory basically suggests that you need to attach for dear life. That is your survival mechanism. You will do it no matter what. You'll attach. If they're not a nice person, you will do it. You'll find a way because that is your survival. Unfortunately, you will create ideas about yourself that aren't right because they fit better. So there's something wrong with me because the attachment figure is saying so. Therefore, I must always work really hard and never say how I feel. You'll change your mind to fit. So make sure you stay around and look after you. So this is where core ideas come from, attachment theory. And so attachment theory breaks it down into anxious attachment, avoidant. You do have two subtypes of that. So you've got avoidant dismissive and avoidant fearful, secure and disorganized, where it's just that's just pure. You might as well not have an attachment theory. That's quite a lot of trauma for it to be disorganized. Hopefully that kind of shows why I dug down into attachment theory from core beliefs, because it's not something just to, oh, you don't like yourself, you just kind of don't think you're not good enough, because it's the origin of almost everything. I mean, except for traumas later in life, this sets up a lot of things.
Breaking down those core four attachment styles, how is that important or essential to like human life?
Lots of research looked into how the attachment styles stayed the same in a lot of people into adulthood, and that they mimicked the patterns in love later in life are the same as you used in childhood. So whether you're secure, avoidant, or anxious was very much dependent on your attachment style growing up. In attachment, everything is in there. Everything. So a secure attachment is a stable base that slowly soothes your emotions, tells you what your emotions are, tells you how to deal with emotions. If you're avoidant and you get into a relationship, you'll do a set of behaviors. If you're anxious and you're in a relationship, you'll do a set of behaviors. And these don't help you. I don't like to use the word dysfunctional, but they don't. You could have more beneficial. That's the best way to put it. You could have more reward from relationships. Avoidance could know that they can be vulnerable, and that actually if we looked at the normal range of people who do function really well, they would be vulnerable, emotional in core relationships, and then the so-called, strong on outside. So they could then let themselves love and have the emotions and have that attachment. And the anxious people, if they know their style, they'll know that first of all, they don't value themselves. And secondly, they don't believe anyone's going to stay around. They've been told that people leave. There is lots of love, but you can only have it for a really short amount of time, and then it's going to go away. There are some great books out there that just slowly go for how you break down your attachment style and how to get the most from love, really, which is what everyone really wants out of life.
Do you mind just going through each one, just in case people don't know what each attachment theory is?
Yeah, so secure, yeah. So secure, good interaction. The child is told that there'd always be someone, there'd be someone there in general. Remember, it's only like 70, 80% of the time. You can't be perfect. So
Yeah.
any parents out there, you can't be perfect. Don't use attachment fear to hit yourself with a stick. It's not going to go anywhere. In general, there's love. In general, there's acceptance. Anxious is where there was love, but it's kind of out of reach, or it was there. So maybe, I don't know, the parent was there, but then they went away for weeks at a time and they weren't quite sure when they were coming back. I'm trying to think. One of the examples was like someone who had alcoholic parent, and then the parent was there for years at a time, but then just got into difficulty, disappeared, didn't have the connection anymore. And so the anxious attachment is, I know what love is, I felt it, but they might just go at any moment. There's not that security and sense of certainty that they're staying. And also it normally comes with low self-worth. So the reason is that I'm not giving enough worth for them to stay around. There's something wrong with me.
Mm.
So anxious attachment, they're still reaching out, like help me, be with me, console me, come, I'm in distress and you're not there. If a child is rejected, they then get angry. Okay. So anger is a natural motion to rejection. If a parent is criticizing or says, no, you don't do that, you're not allowed emotion, my needs, or they say you're not allowed your anger, then they mute. and they go completely avoidant, which is over time they've learned not to protest because they need the attachment figure to stay. And they know if they get angry, the attachment figure criticizes and pushes them away. So they've gone through all those stages. They've reached out, they've cried, they've gone anxious, didn't do anything. Then they got angry. No, my needs. You come here, look after me. And then that got punished. So then the child learns, I'm not going to do anything. And the interesting thing is that they found there's just as much emotional response in the kids who are completely like this, no emotion, completely mute, the same amount of physical kind of change in the body, but no response as the anxious kids. The anxious kids have just as much going on in their body, but there's no representation. So those are the three different types. And miss out disorganized, because that's another story as well.
Could you, so let's say you started off, because as you was talking, I'm trying to think like what type of attachment style I had. Kind of lean a little bit towards, I want to say maybe avoidant. Is there a way of coming out of that? Because I guess the hope would be, one day if I'm lucky enough to become a parent, that I don't do the same things and maybe puts my child into a more secure route. Is there a way of doing that, like kind of stopping that circle?
Yeah, there definitely is. First of all, if it's trauma based, the research, the paper I always think of was an American one, and they said that about 50% of the population were pretty secure, 25 insecure to some level, anxious, 25% avoidant. So that was the general guesstimate. That was based on 1,000 people or something. So that's not the best way to think about the UK, or just to give some idea. I don't know what the numbers are now, but there's a fair few people who fit into the avoidant and anxious style. If it's not layered in trauma, now some people don't know that it's layered in trauma, but if it's not layered in trauma, again, don't use this as a stick to attack yourself with. Being a little bit anxious or a little bit avoidant, you normally get one person who's a tiny bit avoidant and one person who's a tiny bit anxious. And they've done studies and it kind of shows, I think last time, men are slightly more avoidant, women slightly more on the anxious side. Again, recognizing that in comparison to I can't maintain or create love, or I really want love so much I just can't get it. Everything is just, every time it comes in, it falls apart. That's when I'd be saying get some support, therapy. They found that people who are more anxious attachment, if they go and find someone who's secure, helps them get better. Yeah. I mean, you shouldn't be finding someone to make yourself better, but it does, because they need to know that someone's going to stick around and they need to be consoled. So if someone who's listening to their emotions and their concerns and saying, look, this is okay. I get that you're a bit anxious. I get that you're feeling that I'm not involved. That's not what's happening. I'm feeling X, Y, and Z. And they come together and communicate really well. Key advice I'd have for if you're slightly on the scale, anxious, it would be pick the right person, because anxious makes you want to throw yourself in. And when you get a little bit of love, you want more. And so be a bit careful. And the avoidance, communicate how you feel. Normally some ideals in there that of emotional vulnerability shouldn't be there. But I'm saying in love, 100% emotional. You should be, slowly, increments, build trust. But at some point you're aiming towards your emotions are as transparent as anything else. In the relationship, you often find in avoidance, there's no rules. It's just shut off everything. And then when you've got to learn the rules, well, then how do I express emotion? You've got to learn that it's not weak, bad, whatever. There's normally an interpretation in there somewhere. You've got to learn that it's not, and that you won't be seen as less than for being vulnerable. Yeah, that would be my small hints and tips. But if it's layered in trauma, you need to slowly heal, and I would. It's very hard if you're very deep into one of those two styles.
Maybe I'm not like all the way down into the
kind of
avoidant. Yeah, because I've in a relationship and all that stuff, and all of that is fine. I think it's just more of a case of if there is some type of adversary or anything, like any problems, I'm quick to kind of like harden up. Don't really want to say anything. I'm not really I'm not a confrontational person, so if I do if I do get into a situation like that, I'd rather just say nothing.
Remembering also that's quite normal. We don't like confrontation. Confrontation means battling. I mean, our minds are saying that's like a fight. Muting emotions in some environments might be really functional. You get some people who mute environments around people very critical about emotion. You have two ways. You can try and stay really strong and say, no, actually, my emotion is important. You will listen. Or you can say, actually, I don't want to fight this battle. What's this battle going to give me? And you say, actually, I'll keep that in here and I'll go express that with someone who does listen. Yeah.
So I guess with that, using the attachment theory, is there anything that people can use to kind of enhance any relationships that they're currently going through?
Yeah. Quick fire. If you just want to feel a bit better, first of all, the assertive techniques. So there's a website called CCI, which I think is Clinical Centre for Interventions or something. It's an Australian website. They do assertiveness workbooks. It was not going to cure everything. Probably going to still be in one of those boxes. But if you want, it's almost like you're reading the book as you say it to people. So if you're avoidant, you've got to say, I feel ... in a safe, trusting environment with someone you trust, and wait for them to respond. And now that emotion might be horrible. It might feel really vulnerable to say, but you can assertively say and not get and listen and listen. Really important to listen when they say something. Don't get defensive. Listen. You might have if you've got one of the attachment styles, you want to bite or say or take it personally. Listen. Take a breath. You can even say to them, "I am taking a breath right now. I am overwhelmed in conflict." Well, I feel so vulnerable right now. Say it. This person you're meant to be teaming up with, take on the world with. It sounds really basic, but the biggest things are reactions and not stating or valuing that your emotion is important. It has to be theoretical. I am right. You are wrong. No. Emotion isn't right or wrong. Emotion is just what you feel, and therefore it's important. So that's for avoidance. And for anxious, boundaries. That's number one, boundaries. Someone might give you all the love that you've been seeking and you really want it and you're going to grab hold of it. If they break your boundaries, you communicate frustration. There's frustration in relationships as well. They need to know that. An amazing philosopher called Alain de Botton. I don't know if you've heard of him.
No.
Amazing. He says there's frustration. You're meant to get annoyed by a partner. People are annoying. And if you put two people long enough together, they're going to annoy the hell out of each other. That's okay. And you're meant to say, look, this slightly frustrated me. I know you didn't mean to do this, but anxious people don't do that. They want love so badly. They don't say how they feel. And so that pents up. Where's that frustration and anger going? Unfortunately, this is a really sad thing. They normally throw it at themselves. But yeah, I'm frustrated. Same rule, actually. Sorry. I feel frustrated. Wait for them to respond. When this and this happens, I feel frustrated. If they fly off the handle, you're not in a good boundaried, trust-evoking environment. And also, asserting boundaries. I know this happened, but this is really important to me. And then seeing if they listen and build trust from there. People hit against boundaries all the time. It's not just because someone did something not necessarily great, damage trust a little bit, or hit a boundary. As long as they're willing to work with you, communicate, and build from there, not break your boundary again, there's good hope that you can still build a loving environment. But you've got to be boundaried. This is what's okay and this is what isn't very early on so that you can help build a loving, trustworthy relationship.
Yeah, it's true. Like you said, if you want this relationship to grow, you really do have to share what your true feelings and emotions are. So what are some of the promising areas of research in attachment theory that may deepen our understanding of human connections in the future?
So attachment theory is quite old. They are doing some stuff. So they're looking into like neuroscience of it and things like that right now, and proving, that there is an anxiety response. Back then, they were basically finding very simple ways. If you're sweating more, you were more anxious, and therefore more electrode went through your finger. It was just really, imagine that now, and now they have the full brain scan and the EEG. And so back then, they were doing that anyway. So I don't think it's massive strides in that. It's just knowing that there is something there, and think about that from a neuroscience kind of point of view. There is some interesting stuff coming out in kind of attachment in VR. I'm very interested by that. Basically, what you need is an attachment figure that is just reliable and consistent, and VR can do that. I was also reading something very, very quickly just around, they were trying to create a young version of you. So you put pictures in, and it creates a young version of you, and then you try and recreate like how you see your younger self, because there's a lot of detachment from our younger selves, especially in avoidance when it's been shut off. I'm not allowed to be me.
The VR stuff is very interesting. with MQ, we also have another website called Participate, where we have
Mm-hmm.
people submit their recent
Mm-hmm.
studies if they're looking for volunteers and stuff like that. And sometimes I go through it and I see some of the VR stuff, and it's so interesting. Like someone like depression, anxiety, and it's amazing because like usually when there's always talk of new technology, there's always the fear that it's going to come and it's going to replace this, or the
Mm-hmm.
world won't
Mm-hmm.
be the same way it's going to be. But then you see like all these kind of uses for it that it's just
Mm-hmm.
amazing. You just wonder like what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years, like how different the landscape of mental health is going to be. Well, James, it was amazing talking to you this afternoon. If there's anybody who wants to have a little bit more information about you or reach out, how could they?
So I've got my channel. So Psychology on Demand is where I let go of all my geekiness and all my interest areas. I just love creating different videos. I've done lots on attachment and trauma. So if you want to know a little bit more, I talk about that basically constantly. So yeah, if you want to have a bit more look into that, it's all there. Reach out. I don't know if you can reach out via YouTube, but put a comment in. If you put a comment on one of my videos, I'll always answer. Especially if it's theory based. If you want to know something, just type it in. I'll do my best.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, and
Thanks for having me on.
yeah, it was my pleasure. All right, well, have a great day.
Excellent. You too.